Welcome to the Around the Block podcast presented by PrepVolleyball.com. We're your hosts, Jimmy Pompeo and Sam Heyman, here to give you the inside scoop on all things prep. All right, welcome back to the podcast Around the Block with Sam and Jimmy. This week, we're talking about coaching as I guess a career or a vocation or whatever you want to call it.
But how pursuit of being the bench boss.
Yeah, how difficult and challenging it can be, and how vast it is.
It's a wide world out there, and you and I have spent a little bit of time in that realm, and so this should be an interesting point of conversation for today.
Yeah, let's get through our housekeeping, then we'll get right into it. This week, we have all regions starting, as well as our sophomore class of Fall Stars and National Player of the Year for the sophomore class.
Yep.
Which should be out the day after this drops.
Correct. And we should have already had the Freshman Player of the Year and the finalists come out, which we will not be teasing here because I haven't picked them yet. So
that's right. You're gonna have to wait for Frosh Pody, Stoff Pody.
That's it.
Junior Pody. How come they have Frosh and Soft, but not junior and senior?
I think probably because there are too few syllables to chop them down. And
like,
they do have abbreviations. It's just JR.SR.
Yeah, but like like everyone uses the terms like frosh and soft, like soft, whatever, frosh, whatever. But like, what do we need for junior? Like juice.
No, because there's no ph to make that sound, or there's no f in freshman. You know what I mean?
So it'd be like June.
I think it's just junior and senior.
June player of the year, scene player of the year.
Oh, oh no, careful! We need to have flashbacks to middle school and high school.
So seen.
Rawr.
Oh man. All right. I agree. I don't even want to think about myself back in high school.
Kids, don't go judging us for the things we did in 2003. We were just as goofy as you were now. So
they'll never know because they don't have MySpace.
MySpace was an absolute adventure. But Zynga was where it all started.
Yes, it was.
Kids don't remember that.
They'll never understand.
No, you'll never understand the pressure of having to pick your top 8 friends to be on your profile. That was an absolute hellscape.
Yeah, or
situation.
Picking one song to play on your profile, or trying to HTML code the background of your profile.
Yep. And how loud the volume was going to be when people went onto your page. So it just absolutely shattered their eardrums when it came out of their $10 Office Max speakers on their computer, because you had to have separate speakers back in the day, kids. That's what you got to remember.
You did. They weren't built into anything.
No, things were built differently back then.
Things weren't built back then. Oh my goodness.
Thanks for joining us on this roundtable of defunct social media platforms.
Welcome to this week's episode of Back in My Day. Oh man. All right, well, let's get into it. So the reason that I thought about this is I was listening to our Thanksgiving episode, which is really great if anybody hasn't listened to it yet. And how many people we know that have created careers out of coaching or taken that leap to try and create a career out of coaching, and just how challenging it can be.
Oh yeah. It is. I think I would call it less of a vocation and more of a lifestyle than anything else. I don't know how you feel about it.
So it's definitely, I think it's depending on what level you're coaching, I think it could be one or the other. When I decided to go into coaching, our coach, Don, said to me, so you've taken a vow of poverty.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. And so like my first coaching job, I packed up and moved 3 hours north and for $5,000 because it was a head coaching job and I thought I had to take it.
Yeah. Absolutely. You see an opportunity and everyone keeps telling you, well, you have one on the table, so you got to take it. And you're sitting there like, okay, but I need to have a job to have this job.
Yeah, I worked at the mall. And I coached men's college, and I coached girls high school JV, and I coached club until I started my own club up there. But it was a grind, absolute grind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone just expects you to do it because you love it. It's like, well, it's advancing the game, and you can do without, health insurance, can't you?
Oh yeah, sure. I don't know how I did it. I really don't.
Because it preys on the young and the unsuspecting and the people who just want to break into an industry that's very popular and they want to have an impact. And yeah, so I mean, there you go. That's how. And the rules are changing, I think, with a lot of the I was a beneficiary of a lot of things changing at one of my positions. Kind of the flip side of the situation you're talking about when, I was at my last post at Hamilton College. Shout out the NESCAC, shout out Kristen Baker. The school had undergone an overhauling of their athletic department and the way they were hiring athletic staff. And so I was actually able to step into a situation where I was a full-time employee. I had benefits and I had all of these things that so many people look around and say, like, could I just have like a fraction of this? And so it was certainly a different experience coming from some of the ones that you're describing, where it's a little bit more of a slog and a grind.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how many different routes there are too, when you're first starting, you could go like if there's a GA position. So at least that way, we're not going to pay you, but you can go to class for free.
But yeah, you can continue your education and continue the benefits of being a student.
That or the volunteer assistant role. That one is
that I actually think might be going away.
Good.
I'm not sure. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but I think I'll have to double check that.
So that's like, for me, that's one of the hardest ones. Like you're committing your time to something without being paid. Like balancing that with a career or with some kind of income is extremely difficult.
Oh, well, just for how much of a time intensive role being a coach is, like head coach, assistant coach, whatever it is you're doing, like there's an expectation that if you're and maybe this is just the way that I approached it, maybe it's the way that others approach it and others have a different way of doing it, but you're kind of on call 24/7. Like there's no period of time where the people that have hired you through the institution don't feel like if they need you for something, they don't have the recourse to just say, hey, like, yeah, it's 2:00 in the morning, but something happened to one of your players, so you need to go deal with it. It's like, well, I'm sorry. Did you call their physics professor? Did you call their bio professor? Did you call their civics professor? Like, I don't understand why I'm the first call. It's an interesting dynamic being a coach at especially at the collegiate setting. I think that's kind of where, some of this is headed. But even at the club level in the juniors circuits, like it's very much a difficult thing to always feel like you have to be on and you're thinking about it because it's other people and it's their development. And maybe that was just my outlook on it. I don't know.
No, I totally agree with you. And there's been times where like they're college kids, they're going to do things that aren't super smart. And like somehow the responsibility to hold them accountable falls on you as a coach.
Yeah.
Because you're basically I don't want to say you're their parent when they're away from home, but like that's kind of the role you fall into sometimes. Like they're going to come to you when they need something. And I think there's a little bit of like you owe them that because you asked them to come,
Sure.
To an extent.
Yeah, and then the recruitment process is kind of like we're more or less like handpicking you to be here, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. I don't know. I always felt like I've always felt like I was highly responsible for my players off the court.
Oh yeah.
And I always told them my door is open. If you need anything, if you want to talk to me about anything, if you're having problems, if you need help, whatever. But like even let's say I started coaching at 23.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably one of the most challenging parts for me, was being responsible for somebody who's only 5 years younger than me.
Yeah. They're
Helping them to make adult decisions.
Yeah, where you in a space where you're still trying to make adult decisions for yourself.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention the fact that like there's always that constant battle of having to sit there and say like, no, I understand that you're like just behind me in age, but I am still an authority figure.
Yeah, when I was interviewing for jobs early on, that was one of the questions they would always ask. Like, how do you feel comfortable as in a leadership role when these players are only slightly younger than you? I go, because they would connect to me better. I've been where they are. Mm-hmm. I can understand their perspective because I was literally just there. Yeah. But I have a little bit more life experience and I'm a little bit more capable than they are now, which is why it's a good thing to have. Sometimes it's a good thing to have a younger coach on staff who can really connect to them.
Which and that is that can be a double-edged sword as well.
Yeah.
Can it where, you know, some of that youth and exuberance kind of turns into trying to be too much of a friend to the players that are there, you know, especially if they were maybe former members of that program.
Yeah. That
it can happen.
Oh, dude, this is such a can of worms of a podcast. Like,
yeah, this is going to be a good one. I can feel it.
It is, but there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I don't even know what, like, just want to get into it all at the same time. It's like Thanksgiving dinner. Just want to eat everything all at the same time.
Oh, so good.
But I don't even, where do we go from here?
Well, I think I think that there's no shortage of young people that finish their playing careers in whatever capacity they, you know, to whatever level they've made it to, that look at that have the desire to remain in the game, and they're looking for an opportunity to continue to give back. And maybe playing professionally isn't there for them anymore. For some people, they have been, but there's I think the interesting part is how many opportunities there seems to be, but how many of them truly allow someone to dive into the character development and growth that they need to become an effectual coach. How many have the opportunity to continue to learn and grow and become more competent no, it's not. It's more than just coaches. They're more like life advisors in a lot of ways, because I think, and you can tell me how you feel about this, but I felt like I was in my role as a coach, or, you know, a program leader, or whatever you want to call it. I was doing a very minute amount of coaching at the end of the day. And most of my time was spent doing other things related to program building, recruiting, culture development, you know, and all of these other things. And being you know, at times being an impromptu, you know, counselor, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is going to end up being a so you think you want to coach podcast, because like, here's what you probably don't think about right now. When you become a coach, you have to worry about scheduling, you have to worry about travel, you have to worry about your players' GPAs, recruiting, scheduling practice. Like, there are just so many factors off the court that take up so much of your time, like you said, including just being there for your players. It's a lot. It really is. That's where I almost feel like that's like the vocation part of it, is like you're sacrificing so much of your time when all you want to do is get them on the court, roll out the ball, and work on the X's and O's, that it's an absolute grind.
Yeah. Yep. It is. It is. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're in a small program where you don't have 4 coaches on staff, and, you know, it's just you and your head coach, like, you're going to wear a lot of different hats, and you're going to have to find ways to compartmentalize the roles that you've been delegated. The biggest one of which, and I don't know how you feel about it, but in my experience, the most time I think I spent doing anything at any point in time during the season was recruiting.
Yeah, especially like, well, when I first started to, I'm at a tiny D3 school, private D3 school with a men's program that hadn't had a ton of success in a city where there's so many other bigger schools that maybe didn't have volleyball, but it's like trying, and I don't want to say convincing because I feel like it's like tricking, but like trying to find kids that would be the right fit for your school and your program is so difficult, and it takes up so much time because like, let's see, my first recruiting class, I had 12 guys, 12 committed, and 8 of them showed up.
Wow.
Because I think I don't know. I mean, I can't say it was on me because they were verbally committed. They finished their application. All they had to do was put their deposit in, and I got 8 out of the 12, which for me, that was like, thank God, because we graduated 9 seniors going into that my first season with them. But like, depending on what type of school you're coaching at, recruiting can be so difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and we talked to and in our episodes about recruiting and all of those things, we've always said that there's a place for everybody in the collegiate game if you have a desire to be in the environment that hosts your skill level and your ability, right? Well, it's not always easy finding those people, and a lot of times the alignment between the ability level of a player and what they want out of their college experience simply does not mesh. And so while they may be a great fit for your program as, an athlete, them as a human being probably won't thrive in that environment. And you need a symbiotic relationship between both because they can't just exist in the vacuum of your gym at all times. It just doesn't work like that. Like, not only you're not allowed to be training them that long, but like it's impractical to, to have that much of their experience be, involved in. Now that's at most levels. At the Division I level, it's a little bit different. Certainly in the Power 4 conferences that we talk about, it is different. Like, so much of your experience is wrapped up in your athletic endeavors, but that's a little bit different. I think, we're kind of talking about some of the things that maybe exist in spaces beneath that level. Not in terms of a competitiveness, just as a designation.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I don't know if people realize. Like, if you put a D1 coach next to a D3 coach and you asked each one of them, what is your daily responsibility within your program? They would have completely different lists. Absolutely different.
100%. 100%. If you put, Kelly Sheffield and I don't know, Don.
Put them next to Don. They know each other.
They do know each other. But if you put them next to each other, they're going to have, exactly like you said, they're going to have vastly different experiences about what their day is like.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I agree with you. It's crazy. You do the same job. Like, oh, what's your job?
But they don't. They do, but
exactly.
They do, but they don't. They hold the clipboard or the iPad and they get to, make the lineup decisions. And sometimes, but that's the thing, is a lot of people don't understand, like, a lot of these power conferences, the head coach is not running the show. They are, but they're not. They're not making the tactical decisions in matches. They're not the ones that are pulling the strings with the X's and O's and personnel decisions.